Good evening, all. Biologist is a student-run biology community created for curious minds across the life science spectrum, from genetics and microbiology to ecology, botany, zoology, and conservation. It serves as a collaborative platform where students come together to explore ideas, share knowledge, and engage in meaningful scientific discussions. Continuing our journey of exploring different dimensions of life sciences, today's session focuses on a fascinating and ecologically important group of organisms, amphibians. Amphibians play a crucial role in maintaining ecosystem balance and are often considered sensitive indicators of environmental health. Their presence or decline can reveal important changes occurring within ecosystems, making them highly significant in biodiversity research and conservation. Today's session is titled Amphibians, Ecology and Ecological Significance. Through this talk, we aim to gain a deeper understanding of ecological roles of amphibians and their importance in sustaining natural ecosystems. To guide us through this topic, we are honored to have Dr. Sujith V. Gopalan with us today. Dr. Sujith V. Gopalan is a conservation biologist and herpetologist based in Kerala, India, specializing in the biodiversity of Western Ghats. He is widely recognized for his work on amphibian conservation and population genetics, contributing valuable insight into diversity, ecology, and conservation of amphibians in one of the world's most important biodiversity hotspots. Through his research and conservation efforts, he continues to advance our understanding of amphibian ecology and the importance of protecting fragile ecosystems. We are delighted to have him with us today and look forward to an insightful session. Let us warmly welcome Dr. Sujith V. Gopalan. Please, sir.
Thank you, Georgie, for that introduction. I'll go in a few minutes. Let me. Okay. Maybe am I audible to you? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Biology, for inviting me to deliver such a lecture, and thank you, Izan, for recommending me. It is really an honor to speak to young people like you always. Um, in few years, like if you take the history of conservation in India, for last few years, there are like, if you people do understand that we are, when it comes to Kerala, we are pioneer in doing many things. We always say that. So if you take to the conservation level of species in India, for last few years, we have been getting into lesser known species. Right? We have like, I know Izan from a group called Society for Ordnance Studies, which works on all domains of India. We have initially started from Kerala. Now we focus on that India. We have researchers who do research in different parts of India. So we started from this. We have started looking into ordinates. We have already been into butterflies. We are into birds. We are started it from here, because apart from other states, if you look at the research is majorly focused on you have these birds, larger mammals. These are the reptiles. To some extent, reptiles research is also going on. But other is very few researcher works been focused on these areas. But we have started it from an end. And if you look at the surveys being conducted in Kerala, we are doing surveys on ordinates. We are doing it on other lesser insect species. We are also doing it on amphibians. So these surveys are happening in our major forest area. Like if you look at, we have been doing it. I personally have conducted amphibian herpetofauna surveys in Kiriya Tiger Reserve, Parambiculam Tiger Reserve, Idiki Wildlife Sanctuary. These parts. So we are initiating such documentation process in Kerala. So that is why we have good understanding of our diversity coming up in Kerala. But the other states are yet to done. Yeah, following us, I have done it, and we have done a herpetology survey in Mudumalai. We have done it in. So we are extending it from here. So people are looking into lesser species for some time now. So though I started as if people of your age, I also started from larger mammals. So I was fascinated with tiger and elephant. Slowly, I got an understanding that we are need to look into some other species, lesser species also, because there are less people working on. All are going after this large charismatic species. And to a good extent, our knowledge on these lesser species is also very less. We now hardly have an understanding of what is the diversity we have, but still we don't know what is the status of their population. Like we understand the population of tigers and elephants in our national park conservation. We are documenting it regularly. And the data is available on the online websites of Forest Department and all. But we hardly know what is the population status of other species. Though we have some data available on the birds, that is for the effort of documentation of birds for some time. Like There are several platforms that are online platforms that came up though, like eBird and other things. So we have been documenting birds. So we have an idea of the population of birds now from Kerala and other parts of India also. But that is, apart from this birds and larger mammals, we are lacking the population status in our case of lesser faunal groups. Like we don't have the understanding of what is the status of amphibians population in our national parks and sanctuaries. We do have an understanding of the diversity now, but we don't have the understanding of population status already. We don't understand population status of butterflies, other insects, automates, reptiles, and all. These are all lack. So if you want to conserve something, it is very important that you need to understand what is their population. Do they have a thriving population? Is the diversity or the population status in the terms of their genetic variation is stable in this population? So that is lacking, and we need not only people from science stream, but from different streams to come together so that we contribute to such a large number. We need larger data. We need large manpower to do that. So my aim for you is to today would be to give you understanding of what is diversity of amphibians, or correlated with what is their ecological role they do in the ecosystem, and how do we benefit from them. So automatically, when it comes to human beings, they are all interested to know how is that beneficial to us. We don't believe that they have the equal right to survive as we do, but we do understand that what is beneficial to us has to be retained. So these are the questions I have been facing for last few years. So I'll slowly move into my slides. Let me know, because this Google sometimes has some issues when it comes to slide presentation. Let me know if you don't see something, or if anything is not visible to you. I'm just starting my presentation. So anything you are not seeing properly, or you're not hearing properly, please let me know. Okay, because if there is any trouble, let me know. Okay, so let us start with this. So maybe I have been presenting for this amphibians for quite some time now, because as you know, when the COVID started, we started with this online session, and I've been repeatedly doing sessions on ordinates, birds, amphibians, and all. So maybe something what I say maybe repeatability for some who has heard it previously, but I'll try to do it on a different perspective today. So one thing interestingly about amphibians, or interesting thing about people, is that whoever is interested to nature, who is a nature enthusiast, you go to a forest area or go to a wet place, wherever it is there, or keep your ears open in a up to some December, January time, you keep your ears open by the evening time, by the nightfall, you definitely hear a fox sound. And they call it in a different way. Unfortunately, I don't know if these sounds can be heard by you, but they do call. They enlarge their vocal sac and they start calling. They call it normally to let you know that they are present there, not you. The other one who is of the same species, to them they are present there. Maybe it is a female to know a male is there, or the male also want to warn the rival that there's an area is occupied by me, so I am there. So this sound vocalization is being heard by anybody who keeps their ears open to wildlife and surrounding area. So interesting thing about amphibians. So when you come to study amphibians, what is most interesting or striking thing in amphibian is that it is one of the best indicators if you want to study ecology. So any species you want to study ecology about, or if you try to understand an ecosystem in a larger sense, when it comes to that, you always look at species which do really reflect the conditions of the ecosystem. The amphibians are one of such species who really reflect what is the situation of the ecosystem they are in. So that is why we call it as indicator. It is not like you put a pH paper into water and you dip it up and put it up onto your eyes and see what is the color, and you determine. It is not. That is not the way how you indicate a species. You really have to monitor the population. You can really monitor the population of amphibians. The rise and decline of these populations clearly indicate the changes in the ecosystem. Maybe it is the changes in the vegetation, if it is changes in the water quality, maybe the changes in some other things. They do really reflect that. So that is what one of the interesting. These are one of the finest indicators, and they have a. We say, am I audible now? Hello.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. Somehow it got logged out. Maybe I did something or something happened. I don't know. Let me go back. Yeah. Is it visible now? You people can see it.
Sir, I think you can turn off the camera and present the slide
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah.
for better connectivity.
There is something else happening. It is not the network issue because this is okay. Let's see that way. You can see the presentation. The phone. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will go. I don't know, something is wrong. Let me know if something happens. Okay. Okay. So I was telling that I don't know where we stopped in between. Amphibians are something. What is important in amphibians is that one is that they have double life, that they can indicate both land and water conditions initially. Their metamorphosis is there. They can metamorphosis. They lay egg. The tadpole stage is there. Come into adult. So we say that is an adaptive evolutionary trait in amphibians. So that if something happens to one stage, it is survived in other stage. So that's why if you look at it as something like we have 337 million years of evolution that has happened in amphibians. It's a long-lived organism. One thing is that they have cold-blooded. They cannot regulate their body temperature, so they entirely depend upon the temperature of the environment around them. Generally speaking, they are smooth, moist skin. That is the condition, and they have webbed feet. And if you all people who follow biology closely, you do understand that biology is a science of exception. So you cannot clearly say this as this and this as it should be like this. So there is exceptions for everything. So amphibians also have certain exceptions when you look at the general condition. So when I say the word amphibians, we have three groups actually, three orders actually. One is something which is snake-like. We call it as gymnophia or apoda, which means it is naked and snake-like. So we have Sicilians in this group. Okay. And then we have this Urodilla or chordata, which says, if you look at the translation, says that it has tail. Tail is evident. So it is like lizards. So we call salamanders and newts fall under this class. And then we have the anurans. So those anurans are one, which is frog-like, which has no tail and without a tail, it says. So these are the three classes of amphibians we call: frogs, salamanders, and newts, and you have the Sicilian. So when it comes to diversity in Western Ghats or the diversity in Kerala, in world there is some nearly 9,000 species of amphibians. Right now it is 8,900 something near it is, of which the major share is contributed by frogs, and the next by Sicilians. Just by salamanders, and then by Sicilians. So when it comes to India, we largely have frogs, followed by we have a good number of Sicilians, and only one chordata is there, which is a Himalayan newt. Okay. In Western Ghats, we don't have any salamanders or newts. In Kerala also, we don't have any salamanders or newts. So in Kerala and Western Ghats, if you look at the Kerala scenario, you see we have 185 species of amphibians in Kerala, of which 168 are frogs and 17 is Sicilians. So you look at the diversity, such high diversity is there in Kerala part of Western Ghats. If you look at Western Ghats, the 252, and a major share is contributed in Kerala part also. You can see it in Kerala part also. So this is the diversity. If you look at any other part of the country, if you look at the diversity of Trivandrum, if you just take the diversity of Trivandrum, so you can take up some 80 to 90 species of amphibians from Trivandrum. It may not be similar. If you take at any other states in India, the diversity will be less than some 30, 35 species. Apart from this Northeast India, which may be different scenario, but we don't have any good understanding from the Northeast part of it. Okay. Now, why do we have such diversities? Just because we have Western Ghats. Because this is one of the hottest hotspots for uneven diversity, and especially the southern Western Ghats. It is the hottest hotspot of uneven diversity. And if you take up diversity in the case of amphibians, or take up in the case of reptiles, take up in the case of an insect population, take up in the case of birds, the diversity is quite high because the Western Ghats provides different ecosystems for different types of species. So if you have different habitat, different microhabitat conditions, then can support high diversity. That is why Western Ghats has high diversity. I'm not focusing on Western Ghats, so I will slowly slip up. So this is the story of one of the species called purple frog. It is very known to many people, though Kerala Choritawala allade vera tawala ariyo nu vecha alkare pettannu parayunna purple frog, because this has come up in newspapers plenty of times. After its discovery in 2000, it has come up plenty of times where people spot it somewhere, photo comes up in paper, say everybody found a different species of frog. It has some different looking different. It is very evident. Like if you look at this frog, it doesn't look like a frog at all. It's so pointed nose, different body structure, different types of leg. It is entirely a different organism to look at. You don't sense it as a frog in the first look. So interestingly, why was this frog not discovered until 2000 is just because it is a terrestrial, it's a terrestrial species, but it's a burrowing species. It spends major half of its life cycling under the soil. So it comes up for a very few days after the rain onsets, or just after the torrential summer rain. It comes out, breeds, and it goes back again. That is the living condition for this frog. I'll come up with. But what is interesting about this frog, this is one of the frog species that shot up the study of amphibians in Western Ghats. So when this frog was first found, they found it to be entirely different. What is that? At that time, we had just DNA sequencing technology came up at that time. The researchers who found this frog took out genes of this frog, and they searched it online to compare with the matching genes which is closely available to the species. And when they compared, they found that this closest species of this frog at that time was living in Seychelles. And when they looked at that frog, that was not at all similar to this frog. It was entirely a different frog. That they looked at, and then they came to understand why this frog has this closest relatives in Seychelles. So that was, if you look at the continental structure some 420 million years ago, it was this, and we call this the Gondwanian continent here, right? So 420 million years ago, it was all together. If you look at India, it was lying in close with the Australian coast. And by 150 million years, India slowly started breaking off from the Australian coast. And by 20 years, it has become independent, and it has started moving upward. And it slowly, by 80 million years, it started its migration upward. By 70 million years, somewhere near, it started breaking. Say you see a break happening there between India and, if you look at here, you have India and some other piece of land which is broken out. So that is Seychelles and something other islands that was together with India. So it broke up from there. So here is where this Nasica batrachus, our purple frog, got separated from its closest relative. So for 70 million years, Nasica batrachus evolved differently, and the other frog evolved differently on two different continents, because this continent came near to Africa, and India started migrating upward. By 40 million years ago, it's hit into the Indian Asia. India got hit into Asia, and we had the Himalayas coming up. And soon after, sometime after that, we had the Himalayan formation, and it is still under formation. But Western Ghats, it started its formation soon after it broke out from the Australian coast. The Western Ghats is always older than Himalaya, so the diversity of Western Ghats is entirely different. So this is the picture of Anamudi. You will see this is a picture of Anamudi, with us looking from the core of Ecological National Park. I'll leave these things and all. It is different. We'll just look at anurans and what is the diversity like that. We'll go that way. So anurans, we have two different things: frogs and toads. It is classified into frogs and toads. Two different classes. Frogs are the one which, though they are scientifically there is no breakup. We just otherwise classified into frogs and toads. So when you look at toads, toads are entirely different in the classification that they have shorter limbs. Limbs of frogs are a lot shorter. Their body is warty. It is like leathery like body it is there. They have this large glands on the body which is called parotid glands, which secrete some secretion which is unpalatable for its predators. So that is the one thing that helps the frog to keep long short legs. With short legs, they will not able to jump very fast. They hop on the floor. So something that hops slowly on the floor, what happens is that it is easy for any predator to catch it. So for an easy predator to prevent it from predators, what it should have? It should have some preventive mechanism so that it escapes from predators. So they have this large parotid glands which secretes some antimicrobial peptide-like thing, which is unpalatable. So soon as the predator bites it, do understand it is very difficult to eat it. It has a very leathery structure, and also with that, there has some secretions which cause irritations to the predators. So that is how this frog species helps itself to escape from predators. So in that we have three different genuses: Dathaphrynus, Gathophryn, and Pyrostipes. So this thing, if you look at other, so if you could sound could be played, it is very easy to see it, but unfortunately we cannot play the sound here. This is okay. So we have normally, if you look at the other parts of the world, toad species are entirely terrestrial. You can find it hopping on the land. And interestingly, what is interesting about this toad species is that if you look at the ecological role it plays, it is quite high. So, or if you take some 100 years back, the mosquito population was not so high in our cities. Though we know in Africa and other lands we have large swarming populations of mosquitoes. Comparatively, it was lesser in India. It is because we had this good populations of amphibians. What do amphibians normally do? They consume this mosquito larvae in water, and they also do it. The adult mosquitoes are also captured in land. So there are studies where the frog gut was analyzed and found large quantity of mosquitoes and mosquito larvae. So they are a good predator of mosquitoes, and they this way control the population of mosquitoes. So toads are one of the key organisms in the ecosystem that control the population of mosquitoes. And you know what mosquitoes can do to human beings. It cause a variety of diseases, starting from the malaria of the older ages to now chikungunya, dengue, different diseases. So frogs can, if the population of these toads are quite good, it can prevent the control the population of mosquitoes. So sometime back, if you look at a condition where a mosquito lays some 1,000 eggs at a time, so some 400 eggs would be eaten as such by amphibians. Some 200 will be eaten when it is a mosquito larvae. Not only by frogs, we have this odonates larvae in water which can consume this mosquito larvae. So they prey on this mosquito larvae. So another 300 or 400 only emerges out as a mosquito, and in that also the major share is taken by amphibians. So if a mosquito lays some 1,000 eggs, hardly 10 to 20 mosquitoes survive out. So that is the condition. Majorly that is also being controlled by other species which consume mosquitoes. So there is a regulation in the mosquito population control is there. There is a regulation made by these predators to mosquitoes. But now, since the predator number is coming down, it largely enables the mosquitoes to survive major from the eggs condition. So that is there. So we have studies which had gut analysis of frogs and said that they are one of the major controller of this mosquito population. And when it comes to two different frogs that you see on this page, one is Pedostobus tuberculosis and Gathophryn ornata. See, how do evolution take place? It is in the way that if you have different microhabitat conditions, frogs will try to adapt to different conditions. Like if all frogs try to adapt to one particular microhabitat, there will be high competition for food. The success rate for each amphibians will be less. So what will they do? As if you have studied about this Darwin pictures, they'll try to adapt to different microhabitat conditions. They'll try, and even the niche segregation will happen. So we have toads which goes up to the trees. So this toad called Pseudocyber tuberculosis, it lives on the trees. It comes down only for breeding. So we have toads which are adapted to breed on trees and it breeds in trees, but it lives on the treetop. Its microhabitat condition and adaptation is on treetops. And we have toads which lives near streams. The Gatophrine ornata is one of the beautiful frogs, though it looks blacky in color. Its underbelly and all is fiery red color with yellow shades and all. So this beautiful frog, it lives on streams, near to streams. So they have adapted to different microhabitat conditions. Okay. Now, apart from that, when you start looking into frogs, one of the major share of the diversity of amphibians in Western Ghats or Kerala is contributed by one group. It is the frogs. Toad population is quite few in number, but if you look at the frog population, you have 159 species coming from 8 families and 24 genus. Okay, so major contribution is by frogs, and we can find that frogs are the most evolved compared to toads, and these have adaptations in such a way they can travel faster, they can jump faster, they climb from tree to tree. So they are more evolutionary advanced compared to toads, we believe. So in frogs, the largest diversity in amphibians of Western Ghats come from this family called as Rhacophoridae. So it has 72 species from 7 genus. And interestingly, you all people will be aware of this Malabar gliding frog. Okay, so they are one of the species that lay eggs on treetops, on leaves that overhangs to stagnant water bodies. Like if you go to places where there is tanks or stagnant water bodies with some good vegetation around, there will be overhanging leaves that drop onto this ponds or stagnant water bodies. These frogs lay their eggs on these leaves, and they have an ability to beat up these eggs, and it makes a froth so that the egg is remain within this froth and it is stick to the leaf. And this egg slowly, these are all videos, I'm not playing it. This egg slowly, maybe there is no sound, but still you can see. The egg slowly starts developing from this froth. Okay, and these tadpoles slowly starts coming up. They develop from that, and when it is almost ready, it directly falls down from the leaves to the water, and the tadpole starts its metamorphosis in this water. So they entirely depend upon areas where there is overhanging leaves with a good vegetation is there, and the stagnant water body is there, where there is some overhanging vegetation is there. So they breed and develop their eggs there. Okay. And one of the major species that you find throughout Kerala is there. Even we have it in Trivandrum here. You might find it in Kochi, Ernakulam, that area, wherever it is there, lowland to islands. So starting from some 10 meters to 0 to 10 meters to some 1,000 meters above sea level, you find this species called Malabar gliding frog, Rhacophorus malabaricus. And interestingly, if you look at these frogs, they have very bright eyes. Eyes are very bright. Normally, if you some 10 years before, we don't go for macro photography of frogs' eyes at all, but now we do it. Now we know how beautiful frog eyes are. So we have been focusing on this eyes of frog. And one of the thing that we found out is that frog larvae or tadpoles, and when they metamorphose, the eye is so brightly red in color. So we thought, why is that froglet eggs are so bright red in color? Or the tadpole stage, it has a very bright eyes, and when it grows into adult, eye color changes to different one. And we taxonomically we say that the frog eye color is a taxonomical feature used to identify frogs. So one reading about this frog eye color, we could understand that it is to ward off the predators. The bright red color warns out the predators, and also it says that the red color, when it is in a murky stagnant waters, it helps better vision. So these are the two things that says they evolved into this red colored eyes. So when up to 1,000 meters, you have this fellow called the Rhacophorus malabaricus, and above some 1,000 meters, you have another species which has transformed this malabaricus called pseudo malabaricus. So interestingly, if you look at the tadpole of malabaricus, the tadpole is dotted. I mean, the metamorphosis adults, juvenile of the malabaricus is dotted, whereas about pseudo malabaricus, it has stripes. Tadpole has stripes. But adults are almost similar, apart from the fact that the pseudomalabaricus lateral side has some patches and all, and surface also, if you look at it, eye colors are also different. So we have looked at these tadpole stages, metamorphosis and all. They also have adaptations for stagnant water, but they're not found below 1,000 meters of sea level. They are found from 1,100 to above. So you know the highest elevation available for Western Ghats is 2,600 meters on the top of Anamudi summit. So they are up to some 2,000 meters up to there. You can find this frog species. They're all plenty available in the stagnant water bodies. Another species which at times you can find these two, Pseudomalabaricus and Herpetologist, you can find it together. So Calacatus has a brown body color. And you can look, if you look at this juvenile on the side, you can really see the red color eyes of this not fully metamorphosed tadpole. I mean, not fully developed adult. It is a juvenile. You can see this red eye color. This is another frog species which lives in the Ghat area on the Shola forest near to that, which is called Gattisalus magnus. So this is found below some 1,300 meters, 1,400 meters. And above that, you have another species called Gattisalus astrops. If you look at the name, the eye color is mentioned in the name, Gattisalus astrops, which has asterisk-shaped eyes. So we just look at the eyes; it has very beautiful eyes. And the juveniles also, you can see the snout has really has this red coloration, and they are more beautiful when you look at this juveniles. And these are the common species we have in the racophorid family. We have in the lower ranges called Polypodactyl maculatus, which is plainly seen in our urban areas. It is one of the frogs of the urban area. It comes to our houses. So it is called chunam tree frog because it comes into the house in the daytime. They stick to our bathrooms and other wet areas, and at night it goes out. So it is there. And Pseudomalabaricus pseudocruciger is there, another species, Polypodactyl pseudocruciger, false hourglass tree frog. It is also found near to forest areas. They are majorly found in. It is the most slender frog, but they all have the similar kind of habitat preferred. And other frog species similar to Pseudocruciger is Polypodactyl occidentalis. They also breed on overhanging leaf surface with the stagnant water bodies. So if you look at species up to there, you can look at, they have adapted. Like if you look at the altitudinal gradient, they have choose different altitudinal gradient. They have similar habitat preference, that they prefer stagnant water bodies with overhanging leaf surfaces, but they are found either in urban areas, some are found near forest areas, some are found from altitudes from 0 to 1,000 meters, some 1,000 meters to above. So they have adaptations to different conditions so that they avoid competition. That is the way they have developed. Okay, the evolution is going in such a way. So look at this pre-monsoon. These are all, when you take up the amphibians that I said up to now, they all breed with the monsoon. You know, we have monsoon coming up in June. After June, they start breeding because there's torrential rain, water is there, so they started breeding. So there is to the stagnant water bodies and for tadpoles fully in that. So there is a lot of numbers after June. So certain frogs decided that, see, after June there is a lot of population of tadpoles in water. My tadpoles will not have a good share of their food. So what we'll do that we'll try to evolve a different method. They don't evolve, they somehow adapt to a different condition. So they decided that I'll breed in pre-monsoon breed. So we have the summer rains in May. By the end of May or the beginning of May to the mid of May, we start getting good summer rains. So they somehow fill or they somehow wet the surfaces of land. So this frog species that you find in picture is called Meristica tree frog. Mercurana meristica is the scientific name. So this frog was not discovered until 2014 because we all were aiming for monsoon to find frogs. So these frogs, they live on treetops. Treetops mean they live in Meristica swamp tree frogs. So they live in Meristica tree swamps. So which is have large trees with lot of roots and all. So they live on these treetops and they come down when the summer rains comes. Summer rain comes, it wets the surface and make it wet and slimy. So these frogs come down, they have a chorus of males calling, they breed with the females and they lay eggs in this Meristica swamps. They dig the swamps, they lay the eggs, they cover it. So they are in the prediction that now summer rains has come, the floor is wet, I can put my eggs there, my eggs will be wet for next 10 to 15, 20 days. So after 20 days, by the time these eggs are maturing and ready to hatch out as tadpole, the torrential rains of June will come. The slow laying area of the Meristica swamps where these frogs have laid eggs, it will be filled with water. And by the time the tadpole comes out, it will be a free swimming. And by the time the tadpole comes up and they start free swimming, there is no competitor for this frog. The tadpole is free because by the time tadpole starts growing and maturing, other frogs will be already starting to breed. So this is one of the evolutionary features they adapted, that they started pre-monsoon breeding. And there are some other species similar. So these frogs are found in lower altitudes. Like we found it from Changota, below Changota graph in 2000. Not we, Anil Sakriya Sir and his team found it before 2014. So after in 2019, when we were studying about this post-flood study, I discovered this frog from Vadachal. Up to Vadachal forest, I rediscovered frog. Until then, these frogs were only known below the Changota graph. So we have another similar breeding species called Badomyxalus bijui. This is a high altitude breeder. It also breeds in pre-monsoon shower. So look at the frog's juvenile size. It is very reddish color. Okay, so by now we do understand that we normally do understand that frogs as metamorphosis. They lay eggs. The eggs hatch out into tadpole. The tadpole metamorphoses and turns out into a froglet and then goes to adult. But there are certain frogs in Western Ghats so what happens to these frogs is that they are entirely dependent on water. They should lay eggs near water body. The eggs should, when the eggs are ready to hatch out, it should fall into water. So they are entirely dependent upon this water body. But there are certain groups of frogs in Western Ghats, which we called as Rauchestes and Pseudophilotus group, which are directly developing frogs. They don't have a tadpole stage. So from egg, they directly develop into tadpole. I mean, egg to small froglet. So what is the advantage for these frogs is that they don't need a water body nearby, because these eggs has not to be delivered into water. There is no free living tadpole stages. Eggs directly into froglet. So they can lay their eggs wherever it is wet. It need not be a water body. The place is only should be that it should be wet. It should have good moisture content. So they can lay their eggs under leaves when it is raining. Torrential rain is there from June to July. It can maintain moisture somewhere. It lays eggs. They can lay eggs within grasses, where grasses maintains good moisture inside. So this is one of the frog species that are laid. If you look at the eggs, it is laid within deep inside the grasses. Eggs are there, and its eggs can develop directly into tadpoles. So here the diversity is such huge. I'm not going to this because this takes long time, so I'm not going to it. So the diversity is such high because they can lay eggs anywhere, adapt anywhere. So that has made them free. It need not be an habitat near to the water. It can lay their eggs anywhere. It can develop from anywhere. So this has exponentially diversified this group called Rauchestes, and it is one of the most contributing group of amphibians in Western Rauchestes, which in the Rhacophoridae family. So you will get confused. I'm saying Rhacophoridae. I'm saying frogs. So this is the major contributor to the Rhacophoridae group of amphibians. The diversity is contributing. So these are evolving in such fast rate that you have a lot of cryptic species. Cryptic species means they be very similar if you look at each other. They'll be very similar, but if you look at their genetics, it will be different. They do have features which is makes them different in their morphology, but also the condition is such that it has to be looked very thoroughly to identify it as different species. So we have these three species which was previously known only as Wayanad bush frog. Now it has been split, and in 2009 it got split into Pseudophilotus wayanadensis, Pseudophilotus amboli, and Kani. Interestingly, Pseudophilotus wayanadensis is seen from Trivandrum to Wayanad. These areas you can find wayanadensis. Beyond Wayanad, you have this Kasaragod, Kannur, and you have Amboli, Karnataka area, and all Coorg, and you find this Amboli bush frog. Okay, and thus Kani is a very interesting species. Kani is seen in Trivandrum, down to Trivandrum, in areas where Pseudophilotus wayanadensis is not even. It is a high. I understand it is a higher elevation frog. So if you find Pseudophilotus wayanadensis in up to 1,100 meters, beyond 1,100 meters to 2,200 meters, you'll find Kani. So it is it is there in some patches in Trivandrum where wayanadensis is not there. Higher patches where wayanadensis is not there. So that is the cryptic diversity in this amphibian. So if you look at this amphibians, one of the things that fascinates me is that they comes in different colors. But if they come in different colors, they also come in cryptic. So it is not easy to identify them in free field. These are all color morphs of one species called Pseudophyllodus wynadens. Entirely color variations. They don't have any genetic diversity, differentiation. They don't have any morphological variation. They only have color variation. So they change color. They have the ability to change color. If you put a frog onto a dust, a green color frog onto a brown dust, if you look after some time, it may slowly turn into brown. So they have this ability to change color according to the habitat. So you cannot, if you want to photograph frog which is different in color, you have to photograph in its habitat only. If you bring it to different habitat, it will start slowly changing color. So I'm going. So we have some bush frogs, which is entire. So you see, these are all endemic species. So how do you identify these frogs? Is that you can listen to its calls. If you go listen to its calls, it will be different. If you people are into birds, trying to identify birds in the field, how do you do it? You listen to their calls. This is the way. If you are in a wetland, and you can look and see and identify these frogs. I mean birds. But if you go to forest, you entirely majorly depend upon the sounds of the birds to identify. Similarly, the easiest ways to identify amphibians is hearing to their calls. The calls are entirely unique, and we say that the call is a taxonomical feature to identify frogs, as if you do in birds. Call is and as if in birds, these all each species exhibit different calls also. This is a tile that are made of frog eyes, different frog eyes. So recently, it has come up to an understanding. 2021, a paper came up which says that frog eye color, the color of its iris, its color of the retina, and all those things combinedly, you can use it as a taxonomic feature to identify. So if you have a different, if you look at this different, you have this different green bush frogs. If you look at this, each of their eyes, the eyes are differently colored. So eye is a taxonomical feature to identify these frogs. I'm skipping some portions. So these are all bush frogs. I'm just skipping. I'll come to them. So interestingly, one thing I find very good to study amphibian is that these frogs, as if I said, the Rhacophorus group, Raworcestus genus frogs, which is commonly called as bush frogs. So since they don't have a dependency to water to breed, they are found in wide variety of microhabitats. So you can find them in grasses, which is below 1 meter. If you go to Munnar and all, there is some bush frog called as great bush frog. You find it in grasses below 1 meter in height. Hardly 1 feet to 2 feet in height, you find this great bush frog. So there is another species which is very similar to called blandus, which also can occupy the similar heights. There are frogs which is found on grasses, on high altitude grasses are there, frogs found in grasses. There are frogs which are found in reeds. There are frogs that is found in tree canopies. So starting from tree canopies to the lower grasses, it can occupy, there are frogs that occupy all type of microhabitats on bushes, on trees, on shrubs, everywhere. So they have diverse, since they have detached from the dependency to water, they are ready to occupy any microhabitat where is less competition. And these are one of the group frogs that has evolved differently in this condition, is that they live in reeds, bamboo reeds. So if you look at the first frog called Raworcestus thalassodus, that is found in bamboo reeds below Chengota Gap, some 1,300 meters above. So a high altitude bamboo reed frog it is. You have this Raworcestus uttamani and the below species that is there, Raworcestus manoheri. They are found in reeds. And uttamani is found in reeds below Chengota Gap. Manoheri is found in reeds above Chengota Gap. So they hardly occupy 1,000 to 1,000 meter, 200 meters there. And one of the frog it is widely spread, starting from Trivandrum to Wayanad or Coorg. It is called Raworcestus of Flandre. It is found from altitude some, can find it. I found it from some 400, 500 meters to 1,100 meters. So in these, they all occupy reeds. And this fellow called Raworcestus flavocularis, he is found in places in Meghamala area and some other places similar to that in high altitudes above 1,300 meters. So if you look at, they have a different altitude occupation, different area of occupation. Some are below Chengota Gap, some are above Chengota Gap. Because you do understand Western Ghats has two major barriers. One is Chengota Gap and one is Palakkad Gap. So they have this evolution that they have been separated for a long time. Below Chengota Gap, they started evolving differently. So that is how they have, and they have developed differently. And entirely, one species is there, which is the highest altitude frog, which we believe. It is called Raworsis resplendent. We call resplendent frog. So these occupy areas somewhere near some 1,900 to 2,600 meters from there. So it is the highest altitude frogs, and they are all found on mountain ecosystems. That if you go to Herpetologist National Park, you go to Pulimala, these high altitude areas they occupy there, and they occupy grasslands. They live in grass. And if you look at the frog size, you could compare it with that blade of grass it is walking on. It is hardly the size of your nail, just somewhat above the size of your nail. So it is found in these grasses. Brightly colored frog. And one of the important thing about this frog is that you don't, if you ask people who are studying amphibians in Western Ghats, they would say was that there is something, one phenomena happening in Western Ghats. They are going, and there is an altitudinal shift happening in Western Ghats. That frogs that started living in 100 to 200 meters has slightly started to move it from 200 to 300 meters. So there is change in altitude. They are going above because they have adapted to certain temperature, and that temperature is not available in 100 to 200 meters. So they slowly have to move above to get the temperature which they have been adapted. But unfortunately for this frog, he is already on the mountain top, so there is no way that he could move, have an altitudinal shift. So he is one of the frog species that we believe is facing climatic crisis, especially the rise in temperature. And as I started telling you in the beginning itself, they are cold-blooded animals. They have no way to regulate their body temperature. So in case something happens to them, they are entirely wanting to vanish. They will vanish out from the earth surface. So this is one of the groups. So this is one of the species that are moving on grasses. In this shola forest, you can see how more the frog is. It can support itself on a grass blade. So it slowly walks in these grasses, moves in this grasses. So I'm not spending much time on it. And other species of the soil, I skip this. Then we have certain frog species that are entirely dependent on water. They stay in water, and you are very familiar with some of the species called the Eucalyptus cyanophylactus, our common skittering frog. You find in all muds puddles that you found on roads and other places. You can see their eyes popping out from water. That is Eucalyptus cyanophylactus, and you have their counterparts, the green color. So now this Eucalyptus name has changed for them. They are changed to Phenoderma. You find it in ponds. Okay. And you have this burrowing species called Spirotheca, and this larger frog species called Hoplobatrachus tigrinus, which is also an invasive. So for us, it is the largest frog species in Western Ghats and Kerala and all. It's an invasive species in our Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So we have it there. Now, there's another group of frogs called Clinotarsus and all, Ranidae group, which is associated with reeds, small grass blades associated with the stagnant water bodies. Like in our paddy fields, in our small ponds and all, where water is not so high, you can find it in the peripheral area where grasses are there, and it will be hanging on some grasses and calling for food. So it is there everywhere in urban areas. We have a frog from this urban area in Trivandrum called Indosilverana aurantiata. It is a Trivandrum frog which we find in our paddy fields and this near us. Okay. Now, so we have different species in this one, which is associated with stream, and other things. And this frog species, Clinotarsus certipus, it is found in such large numbers. If you go to Peria, the easier way to see is that if you go to Tegadi Lake at seasons in March and April, you find big, large tadpoles swimming in groups in this waters. So the tadpole is sort of Clinotarsus certipus. They come at very large numbers. So this large number supports a good population of its predators in that ecosystem. I'll come to this ecological significance slowly. I'm trying to say to you the diversification of amphibians that we have. And this Hydrophylax malabaricus, this is one of the frog species that comes to houses normally by morning. They stay in our house underneath our shoes or racks and other things, and they go out in the night. So it's one of the common frogs that you find in this Malabar area. Malabar area, you can find it in Kozhikode, Kannur, Kasaragod, especially in Kannur, Kasaragod area. People are very familiar with this frog. We call it as Manavati Tavla because it has this tattam like on its head, red color. So this very resemblant to this brides of Muslim brides. So we call it as Manavati Tavla in Malabar area. Okay. Now another species is called microhylids, which is very short mouth, and one of the key frog species which is very beautiful is called this galaxy frog. Malnobatrachus indicus, which occupies a very different microhabitat condition. It is a rare frog species. Not much people have photographed and found it, but it is abundantly available in that Western Ghats area, different pockets. But its microhabitat is something very specific that people have to look at find it. Okay. So I'll move forward. Then another group of frogs, interestingly, that we have in Western Ghats is called Ranixalidae. And here, what is important is that you have two different genuses within this group called Indrana. What is interesting about this frog species is that they have tadpoles. They have tadpoles, but the tadpole is in such a way that they don't want water to survive. So they are found on rock surfaces. So if you from Ernakulam, if you travel to Munnar, you have in a June, July season, you will have different rock surfaces you find when you travel to there. That is rock surfaces that is vertically down onto the road. So this rock surface, if you when you travel, you can look, it will always wet and it will have a trickling film of water. Always some drops of water will be falling on from the grasses above and then below. Water will be there. It is always wet. And these frogs have adapted, and over the years they got adapted. They lay an egg on these rock surfaces, and the tadpole hatch out and they remain on this rock surface. So for these tadpoles, it is not the tail that supports them. They have an early development of their limbs. So they hop on these rocks and hop on the rocks. And the moment somebody approaches, what will they do? They will hop down from the rocks and they will fall into this vegetation which is below this rock, and they can easily escape. So they are semi-terrestrial tadpole. They don't need a water body. So they are evolved in such a way. Okay. So there we have different groups, different species. And another frog species that we have is that this night frogs, which is a lean. So if you look at Nasica batrachidae, where we have the purple frog, Ranixalidae, where we have the Indirana frog with semi-terrestrial tadpoles, this Nyctibatrachidae, and another one group coming, Myxosalus. These are all we call ancient endemic lineages of Western Ghats because they evolved entirely for Western Ghats, and their behavior, these frog species are not found anywhere. Their behavioral patterns, their evolutionary, these things are entirely limited, and they are entirely adapted to the Western Ghats scenario. Entirely adapted to the cycle of rains, the different microhabitat conditions that we available here, entirely in that form. So we have two different ones. One is Astrobatrachus and Nyctibatrachus in that. And these frogs, they have parental care. They show parental care. Parental care in such a way that they lay eggs above water bodies or hanging leaves. Females lay eggs. Male keeps guarding for the eggs. And how do the male guard eggs? It will call from there and it will ward off any other males coming nearby. Along with that, he will also jump into water, wet his body, and go up onto the eggs. And he will wet the eggs. So he'll do this process continuously until the eggs are ready to hatch and drop off the tadpole into water. So it is there. So we have different species in that. And another frog species that is entirely adapted to Western Ghats is Myxosalus. They are adapted to, if you look at Nyctibatrachus night frogs, they are in streams, water, which is flowing water. But these fellows, Myxosalidae, the dancing frog group, which is they called because they exhibit this dancing feature, they are entirely adapted to torrential streams. So what is the adapted to torrential streams is that normally other frogs call to females through enlarging their vocal sac and then call, and the females hear the call. They also have calls that could warn away its competitors to move away. But since the torrential streams are so soundy, these Myxosalus group cannot call in such a way, and even the calls will not be heard to the other counterparts that he is looking for because of this noisy streams. So what he will do? He will try to show actions, raising his foot, and we call this behavior foot flagging. So they show this foot flagging behavior to call females and to warn on males. So that is why they call. This is a video of this frog trying to. So you can see he is raising his leg to one of the other male which has come up and occupied a place nearby his territory. So he's raising his legs and warning him out. And he also, I also seen them kicking out males from their territory. So they do that. So these are some of the interesting frogs that have. And one of the feature that these frogs have, they have a tadpole which eel has structure. It has structure is like eel. The tail is very thick, and the nose is very pointed and snouty. So they have an ability to burrow into these growls. on the stream beds, and they can survive there for a long time. So we call these tadpoles fossorial tadpoles. So they can remain there for some 80 years without further development until the conditions is good for them to hatch out and metamorphose to adult. And another frog species that I said to you about is Nasica batrachidae, which is our purple frog, which I told you about the story. And the tadpole of this frog lives on torrential streams. It has an ability to clutch onto the bottoms of the stream because it has a good sucker. And if you look at the adaptation, its body is well camouflaged to these rock surfaces. And one of the interesting predatorial behavior it has is that it can adapt to this torrential streams, lay down there, hang on to this torrential stream, and it will slowly release its sucker and just kick up, and it will move. That's how it moves the stream. And the moment you try to approach it with your hand or legs, what it will do is it will release its sucker. The moment it releases the sucker, the streams are so fast that it will be washed out and it can escape the predators. So that is its predatory escape behaviors. And that is, if you look at this video, it is of that of a tadpole that is clinging onto this torrent. See how fast the water is flowing, and the tadpole is clinging onto this water underneath. So now we'll come to the major part. We'll discuss it out and we'll finish it out. So right now, what is the conditions of amphibian we have? We have threats. One major threat is climate change. I already showed to you they don't have an ability to adapt to this temperature. So they have doing this altitudinal shift, and there are certain frogs which cannot do any more altitudinal shift, and they are expiring and they are going out. And any people who was working on any of the taxonomy, you ask them, there is decline for amphibians, there is decline for any of the faunal group. Nothing is going, the population is nothing, for no species the population is going up. Except for some species which is adapted to human beings. They are adapted to survive along with us. Like if you look at crows, mynas, some group like that, they are, which can coexist with human beings, they are developing. All others are on decline. So one of the things that plays is climate change. Climate change is not entirely about temperature. So I told you about this long about the different class of amphibians we have, the different adaptations. So if you look at whatever I told, they are entirely adapted to certain conditions. What all conditions? The conditions of the climatic pattern. Rain will come in, there is a cross monsoon coming in May. There will be rain in June, it will continue. They will have a continuous supply of water until August, September. So that is a time period where majority of amphibians breed, lay their eggs, tadpoles metamorphose, and come to adult. And adults can hibernate and survive itself from the aftermath. Or like they can start hibernating by the temperature goes down to the winter season. And then through the summer months, they have this estivation process where they can adapt. But if they are not metamorphoses, all this will be lost. So that is the rhythm of climate that amphibians has adapted. So what is climate change? There is no rhythm for climate change. It is either torrential rainfall, then is a long gap. And this long gap, what happens? Major water bodies dry up, on the tadpoles dry up, all those overhanging leaves, eggs dry up. Our Indira nut semi-terrestrial tadpoles will not survive. So that is one of the things that is causing major decline. And you all know we have habitat loss. We are filling up our wetlands. We are cutting down forest areas. You will not allow any shrub around our houses. I have a good population of pseudopilotus calling around my house, but it is there in some other properties beyond my house, and it has been cleared out recently. So normally every year I hear these frogs calling by the month, up till the month of some February. I hear them calling. I am not sure I'll hear it next year because there is habitat loss. There is loss of microhabitat. And you know, we all pollute water bodies. We don't care about, even if 100 people say to us about plastic, we hardly care about anything. There is microplastic injection everywhere. You take up your body, your skin, analyze it under a high chromatograph microscope, something, you'll find microplastics. It is there in frogs, it is there in birds, everywhere it is there. You already done damage what is caused. So there is pollution high level, which is bringing decline. Hydrological changes are there. You do understand. Anybody who has gone to Western Ghats for last 20 years, you ask them what is the condition of stream, they say the stream has gone half the size. They say there is loss of water body. There is loss of amount of water everywhere. So we have certain areas which we have very slow. And there is invasive species. Invasive species. So there is some time where one person asked a question to one of the butterfly expert when we were having a session in Wayanad. He asked me, there's a lot of lantana bushes in Wayanad area. If you go to Muttanga, Tolpatti area, there is a lot of lantana bushes. And you can see a lot of butterflies fluttering around this lantana. And say lantana is an invasive species. But you can see a lot of butterflies there. It is supporting a lot of butterflies. But that is where an ecologist and a common man differ. So he said, what are the butterflies doing? They are nectaring. And why do they nectar? They are nectaring for energy. What is the role of a butterfly after it is metamorphosed and come out? Its role is to find a mate, lay its eggs, and pass on to the next generation. So what is the next generation to be? It needs to search for a host plant. So there is no host plant available. All that have is the lantana bushes, and they are fetching nectar and flying around to see where is the host plant. That is the condition. The people's perspective is different. So there is, because this lantana is covering host plant, and butterflies cannot see. How do they recognize host plant? They have to go and touch with their feet. And the chemoreceptors on their feet, that gives them response. Yes, this is the host plant. You lay the eggs here, your caterpillars are going to feed on this. They're not able to get that. And in 2011, we reported something called as chited fungus. We report 2011, I have a publication in scientific journal which says chited fungus is reported in West Bengal, though it is not so virulent as that one we have in Southern America and all, South America, which has wiped out many of the amphibian species from Earth. It's not so virulent, but at any time it can go virulent. So there are different emerging diseases starting from chited fungus to Rana virus to different things that is affecting amphibians, and much of them are not being survived. Okay, so these are the threats amphibians are facing. They are on decline. And when we normally say to take a class or anywhere to any of the students or group, there are certain people who always ask, why do you want to save tigers? So when we take a class on tigers, I say there are crores amount fund for tiger reserves and other areas in Kerala and throughout India. Why do we need tigers? And especially when you take a class on ordinates, why do we need ordinates? When I take a class on birds, they ask me, why do we need birds? Birds illengi namakku pattu. Frogs illengi namakku pattu. Does anything happen to us? So always I used to say to my story that these are key members of our ecological food chain. You may not know what they are doing to us. That is one of the example I stated to you in the case of frogs eating on mosquitoes. They are controlling the population. They are one of key members of food chain. Okay, I said to you previously there is a frog species called Clinotarsus curticus. It breeds in such large numbers is that your ecosystem around the Periyar tigers is fully with this frogs. Like the lake is fully with the tadpoles. What do the tadpoles and frogs? And you don't see the exponential number of these tadpoles or frogs around Periyar Tiger Reserve after you go in June, July. What happens to this? Because they support a large number of predatory species which prey on these tadpoles. They entirely depend upon this large population of frog species. So, if a frog lays 1,000 eggs, almost 900 to 800, 900 to 950 eggs or tadpoles or adult on whatever form they are consumed by predators. So that is how these frogs, though breed in large numbers, they support these predators in large way, and they also are survived. That is how the nature has tuned it. They breed in large numbers not only for them to survive, but they have a good share for the predators that depend upon them. And secondly, you all know that these food chains, that if you look at this ecosystem, each ecosystem is important. Each ecosystem is supported by different food chains and food webs. So these frogs, if you look at multiple food chains and food webs, these frogs are key members. So they are playing a role in nutrient cycling. They are playing a role as both predators and prey. And that is why they maintain this ecosystem. That's how they maintain this ecosystem. So if you take an example of a wetland, people ask us, is there anything going to happen if a group of migratory birds decide not to come to India at a point of time? What happens? These wetlands will become infertile because these birds has to come. They need to feed upon these caterpillars on trees. They need to feed upon these polychaetes and other worms in paddy fields. They need to feed upon pests on paddy fields. They need to poo on these wetlands. And the bird poos are important fertilizer. And they are made to make this fertile land fertile. They keep a good role in making our paddy fields fertile. Also, they keep a good role in controlling the population of pests. They do a good role in controlling the population of caterpillars. Otherwise, there will be no leaf of any trees. So similarly, frogs also has a good role to play as a predator and prey. They control this population. They control the nutrient cycle. So this way, they are very important. And we, at any point, we don't know unless and until one species go extinct that what are they done to us. If you look at, if you anybody have time, go to YouTube and try to see what has happened in Yellowstone National Park, where we understand the concept of the keystone species like wolf. See, just type the conservation story of Yellowstone National Park and read the story what happened in Yellowstone. You'll get an idea how important each species is. We have proverbs in Kerala which says if tiger population gets extinct, we will not have water. They are connected, indirectly connected. You will get this concept after reading that, because they control the population of herbivores. If the herbivores is not controlled, there is exponential growth in the number of herbivores. It will eat up entire vegetation. It will keep the land exposed. Water in the land will dry up. So it is either it is directly or indirectly. These small organisms play a very important role, which we may not know until they go extinct. So I don't want to take much of your time. I'll thank you for giving this opportunity. Though there have been some mishaps, I think rest of the portion may be audible. I'm open to questions and I'll leave it to you at this point. Thank you. You may feel free to ask anything, whatever language. I'm ready.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, how climate change and pollution impact on amphibians' behavior, physiology, and reproductive biology?
So that's what I said. See, that's what I think that I explained last week. That climate change is not about rising temperature, not about rising temperature. It is entirely a scenario where the amphibian or what it has adapted to a certain climatic condition, a certain theme of climate or a certain way of climatic condition. They adapted to such a way. So that ruptures this climatic condition entirely. They ruptures the pattern of rain. There is a rupture change in pattern of temperature, rain, and other features. So since they are adapted to one particular way of life over the years, since the changes happen, they'll not be able to adapt. Adaptation can happen when it is in a long term. It is slowly you rise the temperature, they can start adapting. But when if graphical way it has exponential change in temperature, they cannot adapt to it. So they'll perish. So it happens in different levels. Either they'll not be survived in the egg form, they'll not be survived in the tadpole form. So there is a decline in population that way. And when a population declines below a level where it cannot sustain itself, the entire population will be wiped out. So we already have situations that we have wipe out of populations in different smaller areas, like local extinction of populations already happened in many amphibians. Apart from that, you look at the reproductive way that can affect the reproductive cycle of the amphibians. Their breeding behavior is altered because they depend upon a particular climatic condition. They start moving to the breeding cycle, which is the temperature or this moisture level or something else that is coming to their way. They adapt to such a way, and slowly, maybe by the time they get adapted, the temperature changes. So they'll not be able to reproduce. So we have all those scenarios having in Western world. Eggs are not survived, eggs are not metamorphosed properly. We have population issue, pollution issues where we have frogs that are incomplete metamorphosis there. They are default in limbs and other conditions are there. Many issues of this kind of seen. So climate change is something that is driving out proper amphibian population. They're bringing a large decline, and it is multi-level. Like there is studies even which says that previously if you eat 100 grams of rice, you'll get this much amount of vitamin, this much amount of minerals. There are studies saying that climate change is affected in such a way that if you eat the similar 100 grams of rice, you'll not get that much amount of nutrition as if you get probably, because climate change has changed that. So it is in such a level, it is a multi-fold level. You cannot expect it to be said in one term. It is affected, and we don't have studies which says climate change has affected it in this ways. It is multi-dimensional affected us. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, tell me, please.
I'm Prem Singh. So I just wanted to know, like as you have mentioned, as climate change is going on and temperature has been rising, so frogs are now going upwards at a higher altitude. So what is the current scenario in India? Like how like the study regarding this, how it's going on? Like any update or any studies going on in India, specifically in Western Ghats regarding this?
Yeah, there are multiple people working on frogs and Western Ghats in India, different things, and some of us are now using GIS and other techniques to identify what is the altitudinal shift and what is the behavioral changes and all, adaptational changes and all. And we are also trying to predict what was the historic range and now what has happened and all. These types of studies is not kicked up. As if I said, we need large number of people to manpower to study these things. If you look at the amphibian studies and other, they can count there are less than 100 people in India who are working on amphibians in different areas. So that is not the level of manpower we require to study these things. It requires, and much of the, if you take up 100, hardly 20 to 30 people are there who score into this amphibians and other studies. The rest are in their PhD and they're finishing out at that point. They're not doing it at the further level. But we need a lot of expertise to identify these things. We need people with at least some 10 years of experience who worked in this field to understand. Those walk these fields, was gone throughout these areas, because if you want to study biodiversity, you need to go into forest, you need to go travel these microhabitats and habitats. So we need people with such good understanding to study these ecological factors. You can describe species in another comparatively easier, but if you want to study ecology, you want to study what is the future range and all, future conditions and all these things, you need people with good experience. That is very few, but yeah, still studies are coming up. There are a few studies from our side also, which we are trying to predict range and trying to identify what has happened to the species and all. But still, we require more people to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think we have a question on this message. Like, do you think they're having famous frog species like galaxy frog, purple frog will help us concern? Yeah, in one way, it has brought frogs to limelight, because if you look at Kerala scenario, I don't know, rest of India, maybe some parts of India also it is happening. If you look at in scenarios in Kerala, there are this macro photography as frogs has come up as an interesting topic for many people. So we find that these frogs being repeatedly, but even there are conditions when we are difficult to put up frog photos on your Facebook walls and in the Instagrams and tag places, because it has to that point that people are looking out for frogs like this galaxy frog, purple frog, resplendent frog, looking at trying to find out where they are available about them. But it is difficult to find out even if you say what location you got it from, because the microhabitat it's such a condition where it is difficult to search out. But in certain way, it is interestingly that frogs has been brought to limelight, right? Because people do understand now that it is not that you have this toads that is not good looking. There are some beautiful frogs around, and people's perception of this frogs from ugly to good has transformed in that way. That is good in that sense. Yeah.
So climate change, impact of climate change, specifically vulnerable to adult group or larval stage.
It is more to this larval and tadpole stage that has happened, because they are the one that is least able to adapt. Because adult, they can go to estivations and survive somehow, but it is tadpoles and egg stages. It is about that. That is the one that majorly brings declines to this population.
Sir, are there any impact of chemical fertilizers or pesticides on their egg or larva, sir?
Yeah, it is there. Chemical fertilizers, pollution is large effect. There are frogs we have found with different deformities, lack of eyes. There are some there that have not developed eyes properly. There are not. We have cases where we have seen frogs without limbs that has not developed limbs. That is all effect of pesticides and pollution. So we do understand it is. And there are also conditions of certain fungal infections and other, which is also caused by herpetological activities and other things, which has caused deformities in frogs. It is there. It is true.
Okay, sir. Sir, which type of pollution is more vulnerable to or prone to their breeding behaviors?
Yeah, it is chemical pollution. No doubt in that. It's chemical pollution that they get affected for.
There is no impact of, sir, like plastic, solid waste pollution or sound pollution for their mating.
Sound may be there to a good extent where in urban areas they may be affecting their breeding calls and other things. Plastic pollution is there. There is a study where we have found plastic microplastics in not only in the intestines but also that has gone to the permeable skin and gone into tissues and all. So that paper should come up very quickly, and I'm not talking about largely, but yeah, microplastic pollution is there, which is affecting them. But we still don't have, we know that has been incorporated into the frog body, but we are still not aware what is that going to cause to the frog. It is going to disrupt their breeding behavior or some other changes it is causing. With that, we don't know.
Sir, I have attended one presentation that zoom cultivation, that shifting cultivation. It's good for healthy environment. Like so, what is your suggestion whether the shifting cultivation is create to their survivability?
Any cultivation that can reduce chemical contaminations is very good. Like even if you look at the Kerala scenario, we had some good organic paddy cultivations in Kerala, which they use as fishes and other things as fertilizers, and not fertilizers, because after paddy they'll go to fish cultivation, aquaculture. So they have the way to recycle the nutrients of the soil, also remove pests of the soil and all. They have this way. So that way, that's why we say the traditional paddy cultivation always supports good insects, frogs, and other population that is associated with it. It doesn't bring a decline, and that is why it is treated as a wetland also. It can somehow conserve faunal and floral population over there. So anything of that kind can help, apart from if it is not a chemical contamination through pesticides and insecticide. It is helpful. Yeah.
I hope there's no other question. As we come to the end of today's session, we extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Sujith V. Gopalan for sharing such valuable insights through the talk Amphibians, Ecology and Ecological Significance. The session helped us better understand the ecological importance of amphibians and their role in maintaining ecosystem balance. We also thank everyone who joined and actively participated. Your curiosity and engagement are what keeps BioGods growing as a meaningful scientific community. Before we conclude, here's a quick preview of our upcoming session. BioGods will be hosting a talk titled Diversity and Status of Biophyte Studies in Western Ghats, led by Dr. Manju Sinayar, which will be held on 21st March 2026 from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. as an online session via Google Meet. The meeting link will be shared in the BioGods group. We would also like to make another announcement. Through BioGods BioTalk Student Knowledge Sharing Series, we are inviting students and life science enthusiasts to become speakers and share their knowledge with the community. If you are passionate about a topic in biology or any life science field, this is a great opportunity to lead an online session with BioGods. The post and registration details have been already shared in the BioGods group, and interested participants can apply through the form provided there. With that, we officially conclude today's session. Thank you all for being part of this discussion, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next BioGods session. Thank you all.